Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, excuse me, I will read through the script. Good afternoon. It is 12 p.m. This open meeting of the Acton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with the legislative acts of 2022, Chapter 20, Section 20, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. The meeting is convening by video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the meeting agenda. Please see the meeting agenda on the town website for details on how to participate remotely. This meeting will feature public comment. Please note this meeting may be recorded and may be published or rebroadcast. All participation within this meeting will be visible to others. Finally, each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by roll call. So, first item of business is chair or town manager update. John, do you have anything for us?
I thank you for the opportunity, members of the board. There are a lot of things going on here in Town Hall. The Acton Center construction project right outside our window is going pretty well, and it's on schedule, just like Kelly's Corner. So the work is underway. We're also, if you've noticed, there's a scaffolding up on the library next door. We're repointing the historic masonry on that building. So a lot of exciting things happening here in the center.
Okay. Couple of things I want to note for the record. Ironwork Farm, located down at the Faulkner Homestead, run by the Ironwork Farm, located at the corner of Main Street and High Street. It's going to be hosting some events this weekend at 1 p.m. on Sunday, April 16th. They're going to be doing they've got some Civil War reenactors will be there. And then about 5:30, in conjunction with the Acton Minutemen, the Robbins Ride will be reenacted, announcing the threat of the British regulars. And also on Monday, April 17th, the Acton Minutemen will be convening at the Isaac Davis House, located on Haywood Road, about 5:50 a.m. to start their march to Concord. They should be marching through the center of town, over and around all the construction John just mentioned, about 6:20 a.m. and should be at the North Bridge around 10 o'clock, and around 11 o'clock, they will be starting a Revolutionary War encampment at the Concord Museum. That's all I've got. Anyone else? Okay, we'll get to the main order of business, trying to finalize our recommendations for the town meeting warrant. I think I'll just kind of march through these things. It's going to have to be very quick because of other commitments folks have. Let's see. I think we're still looking for a recommendation for the Acton Boxford Regional School District assessment. Has that been done yet? It shows on mine that we've not taken a vote on that recommendation. David?
Mr. Chair, we did vote and we voted to recommend.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think we've done Minuteman, but I think we've done the AB.
Okay. Next would be Article 9, Community Preservation. I think we've You've all seen the draft warrant and the write-ups. I would entertain a motion for a recommendation on that article.
So moved.
And
I'll second, sorry.
okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, would the clerk please take the roll?
Sure, Fran.
Aye.
Thank you, Jim.
Aye.
Thanks, David.
Aye.
Thanks, Dean.
Aye.
Thanks, I also say aye.
Okay. Next would be Article 10. This is for the 549 Main Street Conant land that the Water District is buying. It will be, the request is for $1,030,000. Now, the board voted the 1 million some time ago. The 30,000 would be used for the monitoring cost of monitoring the CR in perpetuity. And the good news is I got a notice from the Acton Conservation Trust. They're going to be donating $10,000 towards this.
Nice.
And they'll be coming in with something a little more formal at our meeting just before town meeting. So this is certainly something we've talked about long enough. So I would entertain a motion on that one.
I move to recommend Article 10.
Can I have a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Would the clerk please take the roll?
Fran.
Aye.
Thanks, David.
Aye.
Thanks, Jim.
Aye.
Thanks, Dean.
Aye.
I also say aye.
Okay.
Oh, point of order, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's your intent, but I think we missed Article 8, which is the Minuteman. I think we left off with A, B, and according to my records anyway, we did not vote to recommend or not recommend Article 8.
I think you're correct. So we'll jump back to Article 8. Jim, you'd like to speak to this?
I did have a chance to watch the Finance Committee presentation and look briefly at the budget book and talk briefly with the chair of the Minuteman School Committee. I can attempt to answer questions. I guess I would say the main drivers of cost for Acton are that our enrollment is increasing rapidly. That's going to level off in years ahead because there's not that much more capacity. We've pretty much just about driven out all of the non-member town enrollments, and it's just member towns now that are allowed to have. They're going to be able to fit students in Minuteman. They're trying to figure out how to increase their capacity, but they don't want to take on more debt at this point to do that. So it's a little tricky and slow to figure out how to increase the enrollment safely.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd move that we accept the Minuteman assessment.
Move to approve for town meeting.
Yes, sorry, of course.
Move to recommend for town meeting. I'm sorry.
Yes, vote to recommend to town meeting.
And I second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, would the clerk please take the roll?
Yeah, Fran.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
I also say aye.
As long as we're doing points of order, I think we skipped Article 1.
You're correct. In large part because we're still working out a few details on the process by which we're going to be nominating trustees. So we've got town manager and council and moderator and I met last week and talked about this. The exact process, usually if we're going to recommend Article 1, we'd know who we're nominating or who have been nominated. So I think this is going to end up having to go with the recommendation deferred.
So are people that might be nominating from the floor, are they informed about this discussion or what the options will be? I just want to make sure that both the current board and any possible new board members are just kept in the loop as the conversation continues.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we'll send that out, publicize exactly the process by which we're going to go.
Thanks.
You know, I've seen, just today, I saw a slate of 5 nominees for the 3 positions that went to me, and then I know that there's at least one other individual interested. So we're still trying to work out the logistics of how the voting is going to go on that.
Right, you've got 1-year term, 2-year term, 3-year term. So
yeah. Multiple candidates.
Yeah.
Article 11. Fortunately, all 5 of us witnessed the discussion last Thursday night with the Citizen Library temporary trustees, and the edits that the Citizens Library trustees voted on, I believe went out to everyone, and they seem to be in compliance with the discussion. So I think that probably we're ready for a vote to recommend the article. John, I know you've read it. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I did receive the comments in red line, and I have not updated the version that I had distributed on April 6th, because I was waiting to hear what the board wanted to do today. So I did not make any changes to the draft article at this point. I was waiting to see how you wanted to do it.
Okay. All right, David.
Yeah, I would like to see us go with the language that was approved by council, and not take any of the edits from the trustees meeting last week. There are certain things in the trustees meeting that came from the trustees meeting that might be acceptable, but I think we'd have to discuss them one by one. I mean, I think for me, the phrase comma and other duties is exactly what we're trying to avoid, right? The other duties makes it the whole thing ambiguous again. And that's not what we want, right? If they have other duties, they need to be enumerated in this document, but I would propose that we not enumerate them now, right? So I would like to see us go with and also the previous language had been approved by council. So I would like to see us go with the language approved by council.
Okay, my observation is if we approve that, we've still got a couple of weeks that we can modify it, and we can always make an amendment on town meeting floor.
That would be fine if we do that.
Based on council review. I've also note that Annette Lockery is attempting to set up a meeting with town council to go over some of these items and present some kind of a document, apparently from some lawyer that was hired by some friends group. So those things still have to be worked out. Jim, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, as a starting point, I thought the session with the trustees was a great step in good direction. There was cooperation, there was listening. I think to keep the spirit of that going, it would be appropriate to take the version that we got from the trustees. I agree that I agree with David that the and other duties part also triggered an alarm for me that, if we want to add other duties, we can always do that later, but to leave it unspecified is seems just confusing. It seems like the wrong way to go. There were a number of changes. Some of them were just deletions, which in the summary, for example, which shouldn't need legal review since that's a non-binding summary. So I would especially want us to go with the rewritten summary. So that'd be my thought. Basically, go with the trustees version, remove the and other duties.
Okay, Himitra.
Yeah, I'm leaning on Jim's side a little bit more on this. I know that we still have to get the language, the proposed language from the citizens meeting from last week approved by town council. And so I think that us approving the edits, I agree. I think that and other duties is too ambiguous. So if we take that out, I actually, looking through what I had noted as the revisions that were proposed that meeting, I'm pretty okay with most of them. And so I think that moving ahead with approving the edits by trustees and then maybe say contingent on review by town council, contingent on review and final approval by town council, I think would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. David.
So we can't have language in the warrant that says contingents on review by town council, right? The warrant has to be the warrant. Also the warrant is the select board's warrant, right? It's not the trustees' warrant. We should put what we're comfortable with, the five of us, whatever that is. Some of those edits are acceptable, and I don't know whether we want to go through them one at a time. But I just picked out the one that I didn't like the most, but I think there are others in there that we would want to discuss. And specifically, I don't think the edited summary is correct, right? I think the summary should stand the way that it was. That is a specific explanation, right? As rewritten by the trustees, first of all, it was haphazardly rewritten. Tara Fredericks was getting up and showing them things that she said at the last minute of the meeting. Actually, a motion had already been made to adjourn. And then they didn't vote on that motion. And Tara got up and was walking around with things and had a marked up copy. I don't even think the trustees could tell you exactly what they approved unless it was exchanged after that meeting. And so I don't think we should make any changes to the summary. Again, I would prefer to go with council's recommendations there, and no changes to the summary.
John.
So I do have I can put, if the board wants, I could put the council's latest version from April 6th up before you. And if you wanted to spend time going through it, we could do that right now. And council is also here. If anybody wants specific feedback from council, I believe she had a chance to look at some of the changes that were proposed, but I was not able to understand exactly how they sent and how it's different from what we had in there. So it would really be helpful if we're going to put something in the warrant that we hammer it out right now.
Okay.
Would you like me to share the thing?
Yes. And Fran, I think you raised your hand at one point.
I did raise my hand. I was wanting to ask a quick question, which is sort of, I feel like a newbie question, but I too thought there was progress at the trustees meeting, but I also in the same vein feel like there's lines being drawn in the sand, and that if we don't move forward with something, that it's just going to keep being a struggle. So that's where I'm leaning. And my question of having the warrant as is, the article on the warrant as is, moving something from the floor. Can I have a definition of that, please?
David.
So, Fran, Fran, any citizen or any town meeting member participant can move to amend an article, right? And then that takes a majority vote to amend the article. Right. So, in fact, a member of the select board could, after it's presented, move to, add text to paragraph 2 or make 3 changes or whatever.
So effectively, we can make changes at town meeting.
Yes, citizens can be, but we can't, but what we publish has to be fixed. We can't have a note that we're going to change it on our April 25th meeting, right, or 24th meeting, right? Because town meeting participants wouldn't be able to read it, right? They need to know the baseline,
right?
So we can publish anything, and I'm fine going through the changes one by one. I just don't want to accept what was produced by the trustees.
Okay, John, why don't you go ahead and put that up on the.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Want me to zoom, make it bigger, or is it good?
Yeah, that would help. It's a little bigger. Otherwise, you guys are going to be staring at my face looking at this. So that's good. Thank you.
Question?
Yes.
How does this relate to the document we got from Annette that had the changes that the trustees were proposing?
So this is the draft that she was working from.
Okay.
And it does not show the changes that she had sent to us over the weekend.
Okay, so it may be helpful then to also have that version somewhere, so we can potentially consider the changes one by one.
That was sent out to us, Jim.
Yes.
I can try to share 2 documents at the same time. I'm not sure I can do it, but
I can just read the changes are pretty small, so I can just read through the changes of the document that she sent out to us, and point you towards the right segment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
one more question.
Yeah.
Related to the process. It's apparently, let's say, I think we have one hand raised, but I think I don't know who it is, just in case we had someone from the trustees on the call.
The trustees have had their chance. I think it's important, considering the short timeline we're on. I'm going to get all the input from the select board first.
Got it. Thanks.
So I think section 1, I don't see any changes. Section 2A, no changes. Section 2B, the edit that the trustees have sent to us adds the phrase "after library gift fund." They added the phrase "among other roles, including but not limited to promoting the history of the library and how it was established, and for advocating and advising for the best interest of the citizens' library and its assets." So, David.
I'm okay with that change if we omit the among their other roles, including but not limited to. So basically the change in the last line that says advocating and advising and its assets. So what I would say if I read the whole thing is the board is responsible for overseeing the use of the West Acton Citizens Library Fund, promoting the history of the library and how it was established, and for the advocating and advising for the best interest of the Citizens Library and its assets. It's a little awkwardly written, but I think it's basically grammatically correct.
I'm okay with that as well. I know that, even the way that these kind of different responsibilities are outlined, they are pretty vague. And so a lot can fall under it. And even our current trustees at AML, most of their responsibilities do fall in some way, shape, or form. So I think that it provides flexibility, but at the same time, more clearly defines those roles and responsibilities that were more vague before.
Yeah, I'm good with that wording as well. John, I saw you had your hand up.
Just, I'm not sure what's meant by its assets, and that might be a point of confusion for us in the future.
Well, I'll admit to having a bit of concern about that as well. David.
So however we want to word it, I believe that, we were all there. The concern was that they have an advisory and advocacy role for the library building itself, right? And so I think they even talked about if there was some move to make the library accessible, that they would have input into how it was made accessible, what changes were made to entrances or whatever, right? And so that's what added assets. I think that what they intended, maybe we should say citizen library and library building. If people are,
I'd be tempted to just end it right at library, period, because I think the concern, once we're thinking about this, what are going to be deemed to be the assets? For instance, I know that at an earlier meeting, they're very upset because some bookcases were removed from the building. And as it turns out, they weren't bookcases that really came with the library anyway. There were things that had been moved there temporarily from the Memorial Library. Likewise with the books, that any books that are purchased obviously are town assets, not Citizens Library assets. So when it comes to, moving around books or transferring them or disposing of them, I think they're not exclusively the property of the Citizens Library. So I'd be comfortable with the wording, including advocating and advising for the best interest of the Citizen Library, period, hard stop.
That's fine with me.
Comments from other members?
I think that's okay as well. I think that library can encompass, what happens in the library building. So I think that offers enough flexibility. So
off of that, Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear that I wasn't at that meeting, unfortunately, on Thursday night. It was clear in that meeting under Section 2B that role is an advisory role with respect to the Citizens Library property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some talk about advocacy and advising, and that's what that's the phrase that's in the proposed Section B, 2B. Advocating and advising is the wordage, and there was this discussion about advocacy and advising.
Okay, but it's clear if there's some disagreement about what happens to the physical property of the library, that the town, acting through its representative bodies and not the West Acton Citizens Library Board of Trustees, is going to be the body that determines what happens to that property.
Yes.
Okay. I'm all set.
Okay. Section C, notwithstanding anything that's bylaw to the contrary, the Citizens Library shall continue to operate as a town department. They wanted to have the continued to remove because I think they're reluctant to admit that they have been a town department all along. So that's one change that we can consider. David.
Yeah, I'm okay with removing continue to, basically because a future reader of this would have to know the previous state of things. And, in the current time, we're having a hard time understanding the previous state of things. Someone reading this in 10 years' time would not know what we were continuing. So, shall operate as a town department, I think is fine.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I know there's been a bit of debate amongst former trustees, myself included, as to how the thing operated for a number of years. Other comments?
I agree with the edit.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Moving along to section 3A. The first sentence of 3A says, town treasurer shall hold and manage the gift fund under the Massachusetts general laws. The board of trustees shall pay to or apply. So they want that removed, but I expect it's probably a legal construct as why those words occurred in there. So I defer to Nina.
Sure. So I think it is a problem to remove those words from a legal perspective. We are not at all saying that the trustees have to pay into the gift fund any amount. What we're saying is they can put money in and take money out. Mm-hmm. So that's all that means. So for instance, if they have a book sale and they make $200, that can be deposited in this gift fund and money gets taken out. So there's no change in the function of the gift fund from how it's functioning right now as a revolving fund of the town. I think if we take out the pay into, it limits the trustees' ability to only take money out as opposed to put in and take out.
Okay, great. Comments from other members? I think that should probably stay in. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll leave that in the draft. Section B, debate over whether the request should come from the library director or the librarian. Mm-hmm. David.
Actually, I think it should be another phrase there. I think it should be the library manager, who is the head librarian for the West Acton Citizens Library, right? So librarian is not the librarian who happens to be there on Tuesday. They preferred not to have the Acton's director of public libraries, which I don't agree with, but I understand their point. But really, I think that the right thing there is the library manager, who is the head librarian there.
I think that makes eminent sense. Comments from others? Jim.
Is library manager a phrase that we use anywhere else? Is it at all ambiguous what that means?
So the head librarian there is the library manager. So we could say West Acton Citizens Library Manager if you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be good. We could make that change.
John, is that a title? Is that an actual title of a position in town?
Which library manager or what? Or which one are we?
Either head librarian for West Acton Citizens Library or library manager.
I'll have to double check exactly what her title is. What about just library staff?
But this is a specific request, so it doesn't want to be any staff. It wants to be staff who's responsible for making recommendations for how to expend the gift fund, right? And so there is a library manager there. She's, as far as I know, entitled as a library manager.
That's my understanding as well, that she's a library manager.
Okay, yeah, I believe so too, yeah.
And for clarity, can we say the West Acton Citizens Library Manager?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Let's see.
That's 4B, John.
Mm-hmm.
that good?
Yep.
Mhm.
They also requested a change to the, ending part of the last sentence, but I don't understand that. Their change, I don't actually see what's different about it. I think the wording that's there is fine myself.
I think the wording that was already there actually gives them more authority.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I would leave that the same.
What was the alternative?
So they actually deleted the sentence that says, after review, the trustees will determine the library purposes for which the funds are to be used. So actually, it's the last sentence of B,
okay.
John. And where it says, after review, the trustees will determine the library purposes for which the funds will be used. I think that sentence says that they get final say on use of the gift funds, and I think that sentence should remain.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
One thing I will add, I think they also wanted, I think specifically it was for them the items. So they wanted to determine items for which such funds can be used. But I wonder if purposes does more than that, like if it includes items or.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we want, we could delete also the parenthetical phrase that says, but not specific items. Because that's kind of funny to put here, because what if they agree on a specific item, right? And also their primary role is the gift fund. So they should be able to determine what the gift fund buys. Mm-hmm. And if, they don't agree with what, well, they get to determine what the gift fund buys. So I would be okay also with taking out, but not specific items.
That's not in there in the version that we're looking at.
It's up on the screen. It is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, and that was,
I gotcha.
And that was another change that's in their draft, but that parenthetical sentence was deleted, and I'm okay with that change.
Yeah, we could delete that.
Yeah.
Okay. Section, if we're all set with that one, section B, move down to section C. They wanted to remove the wording in conjunction with and subject to the approval of the select board. Mm-hmm. This is basically for their fundraising. I guess I kind of side with them on this. I think the comparison that I'd have is that, for instance, when the recreation department does fundraising, Mara Haven goes out and gets money from merchants and that kind of stuff. That's not something that we usually approve in advance and say, well, go out to a bunch of the merchants on great roads. So
I would like to see it work like recreation, where if they make $500 in a book sale and then we get a consent item that says we accept $500 into the gift fund. That would be my preference. It should work like the way we do other things. I think having that public acknowledgement of a gift is important to the transparency of the gift fund. I don't think it doesn't be done beforehand, like you say, Dean. It should be done just the same way. I mean, it also is done after the fact sometimes for, there's a restaurant in town that supplies sandwiches or something to a town meeting. And we put in we have a consent item that says we accept in-kind contributions of $75 for refreshments.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
maybe what we could do is, instead of what's been highlighted on the screen, we just say other income generation for the gift fund, comma, which will be accepted by the select board in open session.
Fine.
Jim.
The conversation that I remember about this was not needing to get select board approval for having, a bake sale or a book sale, which makes sense to me. I mean, they would need to, cooperate with very, appropriate town departments, but I don't think we need to say that here. I mean, if you're going to close off the road, of course you need to, you got to get permission for that. But, and if you're going to open up Windsor Library, you have to talk to staff because it's, it's this other town building and you got to get it open and all that. But I agree, we don't need the approval of the select board. Or what you're saying, which is just to have the phrase be about the acceptance of the gift afterwards, so there's some public acknowledgement of it. I think that's a good thing. Book sale donations, $300. That's nice to show up.
I think the word
you don't have to say, so and so bought 10 cents for this book. I don't want to see that level of detail.
But no, but we get actually $10 gifts for the recreation department sometimes. So I think the word accepting there, as you said, Dean, because that's the word we get in our consent items, that we accept a contribution. So I would say, as you said, comma, accepted by the select board in public session, or subject to the acceptance by the select board in public session.
Okay.
John has his hand up.
Okay, John, I can't see you, so.
I'm not voting, I'm raising my hand. So it's just in terms of how staff would be able to work with this. I think that, when our rec department seeks sponsorships for the concert series, it's something that I'm okay with and we're on the same page with. In this instance, if the trustees want to hold a fundraiser, it's not clear to me what our involvement would be from the staff level, whether we are being asked to participate or not, or that's where I think the language was intended to provide some framework where we don't have staff doing things, or conversely, we don't have the trustees doing things that the staff doesn't know about it, or if they do, that it's clear that they don't have to know about it. That's my only concern about this is I just want it to be clear to us how we're supposed to.
Jim.
So, Dean or anyone, how has this worked in the past with the, with the book sales? What kind of staff involvement or select board involvement has there been in the planning and preparation for these things?
Well, in the past with the book sales, the ones I'm familiar with, basically the library director ended up initiating it, getting some help from some of the trustees to actually do it. And then once the money was tallied up, she just brought it to the town treasurer and got deposited in the gift fund. And I probably was not even formally accepted because it was sort of a staff function, because it was I think the issue that might come up is if the trustees decided to do something other than just a library book sale. What happens if they, start soliciting money from some of the merchants in town, or decide to run their own lottery. I think those are the sorts of things. It's the non-traditional sort of things that could be an issue. David.
So can we say maybe add one other clause in there that says coordinating with town staff as appropriate? So if it involves if they want to have a book sale, at the Hosmer House, and that's agreed to, then that doesn't. We just have to accept the money. If they want to have a book sale at the library, that has to be coordinated with town staff. So I would say, the two clauses we want after gift fund are coordinating with town staff as appropriate, like Jim said, closing the street or something, and then and subject to the acceptance by the select board.
Comments from others? I can't see everyone here, so.
I'm just, what does the Acton Memorial Library do? And
so a lot of fundraising is done by friends groups.
Right.
There's a Friends of Acton Libraries who's very active, and they do book sales and provide the funding that they get to all the libraries, including the ones at the schools. That's where I think this is unique, is that typically fundraising wouldn't be done by a town entity. And this bylaw is allowing that. And so that's why I think we need to work with council to make sure that whatever it says is something that we're supposed to be doing as staff or as trustees. And I think that's why the language about making it subject to approval of the board kind of is a way to ensure that.
I think citizens should have the same policy that AML has, in my opinion. I don't know how. That's no help at all. I'm sorry.
So may I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
So, Fran, I think the equivalent, the trustees of the Memorial Library do not fundraise, right? And so, but the trustees of the Citizens Library have traditionally. So I'm thinking we want to allow it at some level, even though it's not done by the Memorial Library, right? And there's the Acton Memorial Library Foundation and the Friends of Acton Memorial Library. So I think that we should allow them to fundraise, as is indicated here in item C, with the two things we've talked about, coordinating with town staff as appropriate and subject to the acceptance by the select board.
Yeah, I could go along with those changes.
Yeah, and I just want to ask town council, does that sound okay in terms of kind of keeping the nature of what we're hoping for in terms of staff involvement, all at the same time being legally okay?
Yeah, so there's, excuse me, the one other distinction here with Acton Memorial Library is the West Acton Citizens Library Board of Trustees. Their main role is to maintain and determine how to use this gift fund. So giving them a role in creating and replenishing this gift fund is kind of a core purpose that is different than the AML trustees. With respect to their ability to do specific fundraising activities, they are, of course, regardless of what this bylaw says, subject to all other state and local statutes and requirements. So just because it's saying they can conduct fundraising, it doesn't mean anything they think of, even though it violates other state laws, is going to be lawful or appropriate. I don't think, I think without the highlighted phrasing in C, there is no mechanism that says the trustees otherwise need to coordinate with staff in any way. So I think if the board feels that that's important, then there needs to be some language in there that provides that hook.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's why you have lawyers write these things and you don't have select board members trying to change them on the fly.
So we should just leave that in the phrase. Yeah.
We'll leave it in as a show of thumbs. We'll leave it in as noted in the original.
I'm okay. I actually don't mind my language either, which is a little bit more permissive for the trustees, because does this mean that they have to come to us beforehand? I think that's awkward, right? And what would we approve? Like, if they start to arrange a book sale, they have to think about, well, would the select board approve it? Do we need to get kind of, so I think it's better for them and better for all concerned to do the two phrases that I put in.
David, will you just remind me what those are? I agree with you. I don't think this necessarily needs to be prior approval by the select board in order to make sure there's staff involvement. I think there's other language we can use that hooks in coordinating with staff to make sure if that's the concern that folks have.
And also accepting monies to make sure it's transparent. So what I had, Nina, was after gift fund, so replace the highlighted text with comma, coordinating with town staff as appropriate, comma, and subject to this acceptance of the select board.
David, I think I would be okay with that too. And I think that that's worded better as well, because even if we did have approval by the select board, then it's the additional step of, does the select board know that, as part of that process, they would need to be, directing staff coordination and things like that. I think this actually outlines it a little bit more clearly in terms of coordinating with staff is one of the more important components. And then also, for transparency's sake, adding it as an acceptance for consent.
Okay.
And then the rest, John, was subject to the acceptance of the select board.
Can I just wordsmith that a bit and say subject to the select board accepting such funds? Because you're not accepting their fundraising, you're talking about accepting the funds into the gift fund.
Mm-hmm.
Would the prior part of the sentence have to be changed then? Because we're already doing something subject to the approval of the board.
No, that would be gone, I think, after gift fund.
Mm-hmm. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
And I think it addresses some of the concerns that the trustees expressed at their, it addresses the main kind of concern that they put forward at their meeting.
Okay. Those are all the changes they asked for within the actual bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
And then we should deal with, they wanted to eliminate a number of passages from the summary.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically 1, 2, the first 3 paragraphs, which basically kind of goes through the history of how we got to this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think the history that's been portrayed there is accurate by whoever wrote this summary. But I don't know as it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's something that they've really dug their heels into. So comments from any members of the board. And then, I see Nina, yes.
Just to provide some context into how town council will look at summaries or what the legal use of the summary is, I had no opinion on whether or not you all should accept this language or delete this language, but I thought it'd be helpful to tell you how I use the summaries typically. The summaries, first and foremost, are used to educate town meeting voters, right? What is this bylaw change, or what is this article doing in plain language? The other way it is used is if we are looking at a document or if we're looking at a bylaw and we're trying to figure out in the future, what did town meeting mean with this change? Oftentimes what we will do is we will go back and look at the article and we will look at the summary of the article to provide that context for the meaning of the article itself. And that can often be helpful in determining, later on down the road, what the import of various language changes are or were intended to be. So that's how we might use the summary. While it's not legally operative language, it can be helpful in the future.
Okay, thank you. Imogen, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yes. So for me, I think that, well, first of all, it would have been real helpful to have a summary in 1962. But also, I think that taking out these 3 paragraphs is okay. Looking at the subsequent 2 paragraphs, I think it does read as kind of like what Nina's saying, providing context to the library and how it came into the town and kind of the operations of it. So I think that for me, it reads okay. And if it's something that helps the trustees feel more in support of the article. I think that that's that to me is something that I would support. And so I'm in favor of removing these 3 paragraphs, but would love to hear what other people think as well.
Okay, other comments? Jim?
I agree.
Okay. Well, I think unless anybody starts yelling at me, I'd say we'll just cut those 3 paragraphs out. They do seem a bit repetitious.
Mhm.
So I'll agree with the imager there that a lot of the information is still captured in the summary. So I think the only other changes is down below a little bit further. Yes, there it is. Through the transition from the Citizens Library being a private corporation, I think they basically reworded it so it would say, through the transition of the Citizens Library to becoming part of the town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were a private corporation, but that was a long time ago. So I don't have a problem myself with accepting the edits that they suggest, but I'll open it to others. Imogen, you've dealt with this more than anybody.
I know. I defer to Imogen and her liaison position.
I think it's fine. I think that calling it part of the town is more vague than saying town department. And now it is a town department, and we're acknowledging it as such. But I think calling it part of the town is just a more vague way of saying it. And so if that's something the trustees wanted, then I would respect that, and I would take on their edits.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
So the intent of this summary, which was written to try to inform the voters of what's being discussed on town meeting, was to try to provide some context. I think the people in this virtual room, of which there are 22, are very well versed in all this, but I think the rest of the community may not be. And I think the context provided in these paragraphs, and even in the fact that it used to be private, is context that many people don't have when they're walking in the door to town meeting. And that's my only input into the decision to remove this context, is that it almost would seem like the transition is happening on May 1st, if you could read it that way. The transition to a town department, which isn't what is happening. So that's my only concern.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I think this is clear in this now opening paragraph, where it says the Citizens Library was under the direction and control of the Private Library Association until the library was gifted to the town of Acton in 1962. So I think we've got the history there. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that's missing, just taking a more deeper dive into the language, I think the biggest thing that's missing here is talking about the gift fund and the history of that. So that's not covered in these 2 paragraphs that we are preserving.
Mm-hmm.
It is up top, though, in the other paragraphs, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the ones that we deleted?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
David, I can't see you on my screen.
Okay. I was wondering, in that last paragraph where we were talking about the transition, if we could say something like, since the transition of Citizens Library from a private entity to a town department, comma, the Board of Trustees have, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot better.
Yeah, that looks good.
I wonder, okay, would love to hear what people think, but I think the first paragraph actually of the summary in like the previous or in this version, I think keeping that, maybe taking out some language, but I think that talking about the gift fund, because that is going to be an important aspect of what the trustees are going to be overseeing. I think that provides helpful context that isn't reflected in the other two paragraphs. So I wonder what people think about keeping the first paragraph of the three that we might delete or are thinking of deleting.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah.
I would prefer that.
Okay. Yeah, I prefer that as well. So we'll keep the first paragraph in and delete the next two. There. All right. I'm mindful of the time now, folks. We're going to try to run up against a hard stop here. David.
I move that we recommend Article 11 as we've edited it.
Okay. Can I get a second?
I'll second. Oh,
Okay.
Image, you second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Jim?
At our last meeting, I was quite clear that we were not ready for this to be coming to town meeting. My view is shifting. I think we've made a lot of progress. Still feels like there's still a bunch of undone or broken connections between the various parts of this moving, this whole moving assemblage. Between the Memorial Library trustees and the staff and the WACL trustees and the select board. I think it's a complicated thing to get right. I think this is good enough, but I expect that we have plenty of work ahead of us.
I think it's going to be incumbent on whoever's going to be liaison with the two library boards of trustees. This will be one of the tougher assignments for next year. Imager.
Yeah, and also to add that essentially this isn't the solution to everything. I think that this provides really important direction and context that then the town manager within his roles and within staff and our library managers' roles will then be able to fill in the gaps. I think that, but this provides important context and really does provide the most democratic answer that we can to really establishing what our joint understanding is of the trustees' roles and responsibilities and how that fits in with their current governance structures. So I think that moving forward with town meeting and also having the opportunity, amendments can be made on the floor. I think it provides enough flexibility, but also makes substantial progress in the right direction for all of us to benefit. So I'm in support of it.
Okay. So I've got a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Sure thing. Fran?
Aye.
Jim?
Abstain.
Thanks, David.
Aye.
Thanks, Dean.
Aye.
Thanks. I also say aye. So that's 4-1.
4-0-1.
4-0-1.
Yeah. Okay.
Point of order, Dean. I was wondering if you wanted to take the rest kind of like a consent calendar. So especially since we're doing roll call votes, if none of us are opposed to a bunch of them, we can get them in one vote.
Okay. Let's see. Article 12, municipal opt-in specialized stretch code. Article 13, amend general bylaw regulating fossil fuel infrastructure. Article 14, real property disposition, 13 School Street. Article 15, men's zoning bylaw firearm business. I would do a hold on that. Article 16, groundwater protection district. Article 17, zoning bylaw housekeeping corrections. Article 18, amend general bylaws personnel.
Can I hold this just for a quick question with John?
Okay, hold on that one. Article 19, accept land gift 28 Maple Street. And
34 and 35, I think.
okay. $34. Change minimum voting age. I'll do a hold on that one. On 35, I would hold that one. I will entertain a motion to recommend those consent articles which were not held. I lost track.
I can read them, Mr. Chair. That's 12, 13, 14, 16, 19, and that's all. 12, 13, 14, 16, and 19.
Okay. All in favor of that consent to recommend, please say aye. Oh,
I don't think there was a motion.
okay.
So moved to recommend those articles.
And I'll
Okay.
second.
Or
Motion second. Would the clerk take the roll, please?
Sure. David?
Aye.
Thanks, Jim.
yes.
Thanks, Fran.
Aye.
Thanks, Dean.
Aye.
I also say aye.
Okay. I would suggest that for those items where we still have questions and comments, I think it's going to be a long discussion, and I would think we include them in the warrant and we just do our recommendations deferred.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll certainly have one more meeting which we can discuss these items in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can announce our decisions on town meeting floor. David.
I was just wondering if Fran's question on 18 might be quick.
Okay.
I'm confused by that because I thought that was removed. Sorry.
So the article is to remove two general bylaws that refer to a personnel committee, which the town does not have and has not had for many years. There were other articles that I think we were talking about that were removed, but this wasn't.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Sorry. That's it.
I move to recommend Article 18.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of recommending Article 18? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. David?
Aye.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes.
Thanks, Fran.
Aye.
Thanks, Dean.
Aye.
I also say aye.
Okay. Jim.
A couple questions. One is, we did get a request from the moderator to consider structuring this as a three-day town meeting. I didn't know if that needed to go into the printed warrant or whether we can discuss this at a future meeting. Okay, great. And I saw a nod, so I assume that means we could discuss it at a future meeting. The other one was whether there's going to be, I think, Dean, you alluded to the notion of citizen comment, but maybe not. I just wanted to remind us that you might have said that.
If there's any citizens who wish to make a comment at this point on anything that we've discussed, and I'm going to limit those comments to 1 minute.
Yeah, we have a call-in user. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Go ahead, call-in user.
Okay, calling user is not there.
Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, go ahead. You've got 1 minute. Calling user
Can
one.
you hear me?
We
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So the Citizens Library, the Friends of the Citizens Library, the lawyer that's been working with us was available on this call, and you didn't even bother to find out what they thought. Also, I think it's inappropriate to try and modify something that was made with a 2/3 vote that's actually on a deed with a bylaw change at majority vote. So I think that those things are inappropriate. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, do we have any other persons wishing to speak?
No, nobody with their hand up, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Oh, wait, I think, Emma, did you want to say something first?
Very, very quickly. So I know we held a few articles. Are they automatically going to be on an agenda for future discussion later on, or is this something we request to the chair?
We'll have a town manager and the vice chair and I will be having an agenda meeting later on this week, and we'll add these to the agenda so we can discuss them.
Thank you. That's it for me.
So I think we have a motion, but no second for the
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Ooh, Lisa's raising her hand.
Yeah, Lisa has her hand up.
Lisa?
There's a consent item.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I withdraw my motion to adjourn.
Me too.
Okay, we do have consent item. Appoint Brandon Comstock as an associate member of the Open Space Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2026.
I move to approve the consent item.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please take the roll?
David?
Aye.
Fran?
Aye.
Jim?
Yes.
Dean?
Aye.
I also say aye.
Thank you, Lisa. And I move to adjourn.
And I still second again.
Okay, clerk take the roll.
Yes, Dean?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Yes.
Fran?
Aye.
I also say aye.
Okay, thank you very much.